If a story quotes CCP virus numbers from the China government without any caveat, I don't take it seriously. Call me xenophobic, I do not care. So the current pandemic has been going on for some time. It is, I mean, I'd like to say inarguable, but people will still argue. They will find ways to compartmentalize or just have objections to anything that you say. But it seems clear to me that the Chinese Communist Party lied about what happened with this virus. Now, I personally am leaning more towards that it was an accident that came out from this lab and then it expanded out to the world. And due to the whole system that they have, and then the system itself, from the nature of what the virus is, and just the nature of what the communism virus is that creates a state that is that sort of authoritarian, lumbering beast that just can't really adjust and be nimble and actually work and actually serve the people and serve people, the general populace, in the way that they claim to be doing, leads them to have this situation where it just gets out into the rest of the world. Now, coming out and admitting that you made a mistake, it's not quite similar. It's not quite as easy to do. There are different cultures. This is something about, I think, the Oriental culture and the Western culture. There's guilt societies and there's shame societies. And this isn't necessarily just in China. For example, take the whole seppuku thing in Japan where somebody disembowels themselves after doing something. This was something that still, I think it might still happen. But you have a situation where so much is taken on yourself that if you lose face in a certain sense, it is a fate worse than death, where people decide, I'm going to choose death rather than actually lose face in the sense. I can't fail in the sense and go back and face my family. It's just not something I can do. It's part of why there were kamikaze pilots. They were so into that. Yeah, and you also tie in the whole idea that they thought their leader was actually a god brought to earth, like Emperor Hirohito. So there is part of that as well. But it also goes into male-female interactions. People might say, oh, we're all the same. No, we're different. We're a sexually dimorphic species. We have evolved in different ways, and the societies that we built have different roles, and we just have different, what's it called? Different ways of approaching the world. I'll read this here from Psychology Today. It says, guilt is a feeling of responsibility or remorse for some offense, crime, wrong, etc., whether real or imagined. And then shame is the painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable, improper, ridiculous, etc., done by oneself or another. Now, from these two things, which society between the West in general versus the East do you think is more guilt or more shame? From your interactions with males and females, men and women in different cultures and societies, who do you think leans more to guilt or leans more to shame? And there's also an interesting addition to these that kind of explains part of the developing country, third world places where there's a fear power aspect. There's guilt in a sense, which is more the West, Judeo Christian relations, then shame and honor, which is more associated with Arabic culture and Eastern religions. Think about saving face and things like that. Then fear and power, which is more associated with animist and tribal societies. And you see that in places like here in Kenya, it's still a very tribal society, and fear and power is still something that actually runs people's lives. You see it in the parenting techniques. You see it all over the place. We raise our kids this way. So when it comes to this, I don't think China can just come out, even if they were well-meaning, even if they did care about the rest of the world, even though I don't really think they do. Take sub-Saharan Africa, for example. There's about 1.03 or 1 point something, a little above 1 billion people. China itself has 1.4 billion people. So if you somehow think someone can run this kind of country and still also care for sub-Saharan Africans in the same way that they do their own people, and then let me ask you to begin with, how much do you think they actually care about their own people? How much actual truth and facts do you think they tell their people? And this also, I'm going to add this other short thought I had with it. Imagine reporting that the Chinese Communist Party has the virus controlled and not asking why they have yet to share with the world exactly how to do this. You look at just those daily briefings with Donald Trump and how they're treating him. They're demanding. We want immediate answers. And one thing I have been noticing, he'll come out with something and introduce something For example, he'll say, okay, we have all these testing locations that we've told the governors about. And then the reporters will say, where are these locations? Tell me the information. Give me the information. Show me location. Send me location. And then the next day, he will come with a chart and show the locations and have somebody else talk about it and detail this and say, we actually talked to the governors about this. So if the governor is saying he doesn't have locations, look at this map. These are the places. And then the media will move on to something else, find something else to nitpick from him. But just imagine if the Chinese Communist Party had done this, had actually come out and done daily presses, maybe not even daily, every other day. Not even, it doesn't have to be even international media. It can just be completely local media. Just have some kind of conversation. Talk about this thing. Share some information. Make people aware of what is going on. How much would that change China, let alone just the world? I mean, there would just be such an amazing effect from that. But you look at how some of these people treat their own leadership, and this might be a thing that I've seen. I did a separate video saying snowflakes actually created the West, built the West in some way, and there was a double entendre. There was a dual meaning to this. In part of it, where it was like some of the people who actually came up with Western culture came out of Europe, and it was due to part of living in weather where there was actual snow, so you had to have planning and foresight, and that led to people having more selective processes and thinking into the future, and just that storing of food and having to observe and plan just selects for a different kind of people, different kind of societies, and that built that up. So snowflakes in that sense. But then now, current year, you have the snowflakes who just complain about the smallest things. Like, oh my God, Donald Trump didn't tell me exactly when I'm supposed to get tested. They didn't tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do. You have to tell me exactly. You have to tell them exactly what to do, or they're not going to be able to do it. You're not. You have to help us. You have to do these things. And with that, it puts the demands, it holds those people to a higher standard of performance where people are not just going to accept just some blase type of thing. They want you to tell them everything. Whether it's actually appropriate to tell them all these things, whether you have all the answers, the demand is there. So there is some people that actually do that, and in trying to achieve that demand, people end up actually providing a better product. That's something that I think happens in this situation. But back to the initial thought for winding this up. There is something that I've said for some time. I think to people in the West that Asians are kind of political ninjas. I am beginning to see and have seen for some time, and I think a lot more people are seeing that in particular, the Chinese Communist Party has made a lot of inroads all over the world. They've done the Belt and Road Initiative, which is something that's very open, but they've also gone through more of a soft power type of thing, buying influence in certain companies, buying stakes, buying interests, making deals, making loans, where they're kind of putting themselves into different societies in different ways. And one thing you have to realize with that place, as I talked about, it's a massive amount of people. Not everybody's exactly the same, but it's a different culture, it's a different society. They came from a different history. The Great Leap Forward was just something recent, and that ravaged that country. I'm talking an estimated 45 million dead. And this is through famine, which is just one of the most gruesome and horrible ways to die. Not just from the victim, but just the people who witness this wasting away from just the lack of such a basic need, just food. Then contrast that with the United States of America, where people are dying from just having too much food. It's a messed up thing. You have people that are still alive right now in leadership and control positions that lived through that. That develops a different kind of person. People can see this in Europe and they say, okay, some of these people actually lived through the World War. They lived through World War I and World War II directly, and the effect that they've had of that. You look at people in the African American community, in the black community, and you say, okay, some of these people were there before the civil rights movement. They lived through that time. They were there when the country was completely separated. The country was widely divided on racial lines. People say, oh, it's so divided now, but no, not like it was in the past. And I think some of the people who actually did live through that, if you talk to them, they would tell you about that. You look at many countries in the developing world. Look at countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Like my parents, for example. My dad was born before Kenya was a country, before independence. And you look at the effect that that has had on colonial countries, and countries that were previously colonized by European countries and other countries. But one thing that's forgotten is, look what happened in China. Now, this is in part, I think, due to some people having some sympathies for cultural Marxism, communism, collectivism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, that they don't want to call them out for it. But it goes beyond that. Just think about the people. What living through what they've lived through would result in them being the way they are now. There's people in the United States of America that you've lived your life. You've lived your lived experience. And that thing that people kind of deride some people or some of the snowflakes, oh, the lived experience. But no, lived experience is important. It does actually shape you. It doesn't have to limit you or restrict you, but to say it has no effect would be wrong. So what is it about people's lived experience, people's lives, people's history that makes them just talk about the numbers coming out of the Chinese Communist Party, yet they question every single thing someone like Donald Trump says? They talk about how Donald Trump is a failure while he's doing what he's doing, and then just don't really mention much of coming out of Xi Jinping. Why do they demand a certain level of information and openness and answers from certain people? Say Trump needs to tell us this, he needs to lead this way, he needs to do that, if he doesn't do this in time, he's failed. Yet when Trump says, okay, this is what the World Health Organization was supposed to do, you're saying I have failed because you're saying I haven't done these things in time, didn't give you this information. Look at the World Health Organization. What information did they give you? What time did they tell you these things in? Have they failed? But no, for those people, they could actually control what they're doing. They could do things in that way, but oh no, we're not going to question that, but we're going to question this thing on the other side. So let me know what you think about that. This is part of my shorty series where I take these small condensed thoughts that I post on social media, then I expand on them in video form so I can engage with you guys in conversations. I very much appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate so much the comments, so you can leave a comment below. Like if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it. Let me know what you think about this thing in particular, talking about why the Chinese Communist Party seems to be treated with kid gloves, or at least with certain double standards or different standards by Western media who hold their own leaders and their own locations. Is it the tragedy of low expectations? I think it's a tragedy. There's something out there where it's like you expect less from somebody. Like, oh, you're just a damaged human being. You're not going to do better. You don't know better. You're just a little idiot. Kind of treating someone like a kid. The whole kid gloves thing. You don't expect certain things from children, yet you expect an adult to be capable of it. You don't really expect certain levels of honesty from somebody who you know is an admitted liar, yet you expect somebody who you value and care for to be honest with you. You don't really expect somebody to give you information about something they don't have, they've not been able to do. Yet if somebody claims they've actually done something and you think they're capable of doing that thing, you'll be actually somebody who's like, can you tell me how that's done? So are people kind of just afraid, or for different reasons, to saying we can't talk about this? Is it like that Bloomberg actual release that came out from some years back where some editor in Bloomberg was like, we can't actually talk about these people. We can't talk about them in this way because they're literal Nazis, but we actually have to maintain these conversations with them for some different sense. Are people still thinking about this soft kind of way where they'll get in there and slowly by slowly the country will change by having more freedom, more market freedoms and having more access to the Western information, and then slowly they'll start thinking, like, okay, we'll liberate ourselves. Do they think that's still going to work? So they're like, oh, let's not push too much. Let's kind of baby them and let's talk to them in nice ways, and then slowly by slowly they'll change. Is that what they're holding out for? So we can't just come out and be blatant and tell them, look, you're messing up. You need to do better. Is that what's going on? I don't know. This is very frustrating to me. I think this is also part of the things that we'll start learning more. More people will start seeing this, and maybe when more people start seeing this, someone with some answers or some more thoughts can discuss this and share them with me and you and everybody else out there, and we can increase the situation. But I think this is a come to Jesus moment of sorts for the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think they can just sweep this under the rug. I think there's going to be some demands from the general world population that are going to spur some changes in China and the rest of the world, and the way things are covered, and just the sharing of information. Like, share, and subscribe. Links below to the merchandise store. If you like the content that I'm making and want to help support me, there's also one-time donations in PayPal. There's also a Patreon, and I'll get Subscribestar up and going. Till next one, goodbye, stay safe. Hope you guys are washing your hands and stuff. Thank you very much.